For as long as I can remember, I've always been afraid of storms. The loud wind blowing the rain sideways against my window, the bright lightning, the loud thunder, and sometimes even the emergency alert system alarm going off from the National Weather Service. I've always been terrified of those weather makers that could mean life or death, even if it's nowhere near me, and it just seems to have gotten worse the older I've gotten. I've learned to stifle it in front of my family and my coworkers, but I'm always so exhausted by the end of it. In this video, I want to share my experiences and validate people who are going through the same struggles as me. Not many people see this as a problem, just more of overthinking it in their terms. And I want to break that stigma and give a different perspective on things. I'd also like to note that I don't wish to be diagnosed or for people to diagnose themselves. If you're struggling with things, please seek help from a medical professional. And just as a bit of a warning, this video is about to get into topics of storms, really bad weather makers, and some recent natural disasters that have happened. If you're sensitive to any of these topics, I suggest clicking off the video. The earliest I can remember really feeling panic was when I was between the ages of 6 to 9. My dad was in the same room as me, probably because I had woken up from a nightmare or something. I just remember seeing this bright flash in my dark room and my dad suddenly covering my ears. I could hear it, even if it was muffled. I don't think I ever held on so tightly to my dad before than that moment. What makes it worse is I live in a state near the beach, and even inland, it is still terrifying with how much cloud-to-ground lightning we have whenever there's a storm, and even when there isn't. Lightning can strike at the most random times, especially during the summer. It's quite terrifying. Because we don't have basements, or it's not very common down here, we have to hide in the hallway whenever there's really bad lightning. When damaging winds or possible tornadoes were involved, we hid in the most interior part of our house, which is now a small bathroom. When we moved to our current house, I thought maybe things would be different. We had another really bad storm hit a few years after living here, and I remember us kids pulling out blankets and pillows to sit on while we waited for the storm to pass. It could sometimes be 5 minutes, others 30. Our windows are more like paper, or so it seems, and I'd watch my mom sit in that chair in the living room while keeping an eye on the storm. My siblings would just find something to do while I would sit and panic internally. I was 14 or 15 at the time. No one really took me seriously besides my mom. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt my feelings when my feelings were invalidated and it seemed like no one really wanted to help. The amount of panic attacks I still have now are minimal, but still just as much as I had when I was around that age. The worst I can remember clearly was in 2020 when a hurricane hit. It was my first ever one I've been through. Tropical storms? Sure. But a low-end Category 1 is way more terrifying when you've never had to deal with a hurricane up until this point. I want to clarify that I'm not invalidating people who have been through worse than I have. There have been many instances over the past couple of years where the worst hurricanes have blown through my state and left a path of destruction as it entered others. The best examples are Helene and Milton from last year, and it's uncertain what the rest of this year is going to look like. Going back to the story, I remember the day it was meant to hit. It was so calm, like everything was preparing for the worst. I was none the wiser, seeing as I was doing my best to distract myself from the oncoming storm. When night fell, that's when things really started to pick up. At first, it seemed normal, like any other storm, but around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, that's when tornado warnings started going off. We were in the bathroom every so often until we finally just had to worry about the wind. I didn't sleep very well that night, waking up every so often to the harsh wind blowing stuff around or the rain harshly hitting the window. It went on up to maybe the evening hours of the next day. We took a walk and there was quite a bit of damage. I had only ever seen stuff like this in photos. It changes a person seeing it actually happen in their own neighborhood. As of now, I've come to stifle the anxiety, but I still show it externally when trying to control it. The shaking, the rapid breathing, the loud thoughts that run through your head. I'll be honest and say I don't know how people like storms when you take into account the danger you always seem to find yourself in whenever it does come around. I will say I'm thankful for the people who monitor these things and actually find a way to get data to help us better understand this stuff. Meteorologists, storm chasers, even the people just relaying the information to warn others about these dangerous situations when storm season rolls through. They don't get a lot of credit or attention for what they do. So I want to say a big thank you to all those who have helped and protected the people of both small towns and big cities with life-saving information. I don't think I'll ever really get over my fear of storms, but I will always be grateful for the rain and the new life it brings. If you did make it this far, thank you for listening. This is completely different from what I usually do, and this is the first time I'm really sharing my feelings in a vulnerable sense, even if it's short and sweet. I know not a lot of people will agree with me or share the same thoughts I do, but I ask you take time to ask questions before making assumptions. Putting people down is the last thing I want in my comment section. Everyone deals with this kind of worry differently, and if there are people who need help or advice, ask. It's the best thing you can do, especially if you struggle with PTSD or severe anxiety. Just don't be afraid to reach out, whether that's a medical, a friend, or family. Thank you guys for watching, and stay safe out there.